you ever sat there wondering why things still feel stuck? Even after you've tried everything they told you, you read the books, watched the videos, wrote the affirmations, said them out loud every morning, but somehow, deep down, it feels like you're still waiting for the breakthrough, waiting for the shift, waiting for that big moment that finally makes it all click. And every time you see someone else having their glow up or talking about how fast they manifested their dreams, it stings a little. Not because you're jealous, but because you're tired. You're tired of showing up, tired of doing the work, tired of hoping and still feeling like you're on the outside looking in. Let's be honest. Nobody told you it would feel like this. Nobody told you that even with all the tools, all the advice, all the right steps, you'd still hit this invisible wall. A wall that doesn't show up on your vision board. A wall that no positive affirmation can bulldoze in a day. This wall is built from something deeper. It's built from the quiet doubts you never say out loud. It's built from those moments you were told to shrink, to settle, to stay small, and as much as you try to rise above it, a part of you still clings to it, like a weight you can't quite shake off. I get it. You've been holding it together, smiling when it hurts, pretending you're okay because that's what strong people do. But the truth is, strength without softness hardens into something heavy. It turns into a mask that's exhausting to wear. And the universe, it's been sending little nudges. Those restless nights, the random tears you can't explain, the feeling that something's trying to get your attention. Those aren't glitches. They're signals. They're alarms. They're the cracks in the surface, asking you to stop pretending and start listening. Because here's what nobody tells you. Sometimes the reason the door hasn't opened is because you're still holding the old key. The key that fit the old version of you. The version that settled, the version that played safe, the version that carried other people's expectations on your back like a backpack filled with rocks. And if you're going to unlock the next chapter, you don't just need a new key, you need to let go of the old one. This is the part nobody talks about on Instagram. The messy middle. The in-between space where you're no longer who you were, but not yet who you're becoming. It's awkward. It's scary. It's uncomfortable, but it's necessary, because before anything shifts on the outside, something has to shift on the inside. And that shift, it doesn't start with manifesting the dream car, or the dream house, or the dream partner. It starts with manifesting a new relationship with yourself, a relationship that says, I don't have to earn my worth. I don't have to hustle for love. I don't have to prove my value by doing more, giving more, sacrificing more. So today, I'm not here to sell you a shortcut. I'm not here to promise you instant magic. I'm here to offer you a deeper path, a path that takes courage, a path that asks you to get honest about the beliefs you've been carrying, a path that invites you to lay down the old story, even if it feels scary, even if it feels unfamiliar. Because the truth is, the longer you carry a story that doesn't fit, the heavier it becomes, and no affirmation in the world can override a belief you haven't questioned. I want you to imagine standing in front of a mirror, looking into your own eyes, and asking yourself, what am I still believing that's holding me back? What story am I still living that no longer serves me? What am I willing to release so I can make room for something new? Because those questions, that's where the real work begins. Not in the perfect morning routine, not in the pretty journal, but in the willingness to face yourself. And that willingness, that's the moment everything starts to shift. Let's get real for a minute. One of the hardest things to admit is that sometimes, even when you're doing everything right, life still feels stuck. You've been showing up, trying, pushing, hoping, and yet the results don't match the effort. And that gap, that space between what you're doing and what you're getting, it starts to wear you down. It makes you question if something's wrong with you. But the truth is, there's nothing wrong with you. The problem is that nobody teaches us what to do when the external isn't catching up with the internal. See? Most advice out there tells you to just keep going. Hustle harder. Stay positive. But they don't tell you what to do with the quiet ache that creeps in at night. The feeling that maybe you're missing something crucial. Maybe there's a piece of the puzzle you haven't figured out yet. And that's exactly where depths of manifestation comes in. It doesn't sugarcoat the process. It doesn't pretend that alignment is just a mindset. It shows you that alignment is a relationship between your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. And if even one of those is out of sync, nothing sticks. I remember hearing about someone who had been working for years to manifest a new career. She had the vision board, the affirmations, the daily routines, but every opportunity seemed to fall apart. And it wasn't until she started digging deeper that she realized every time she imagined herself successful, she also imagined herself alone. Somewhere deep down, she equated success with isolation. And that belief, that hidden story, was quietly closing every door she tried to open. That's the challenge with hidden beliefs. You can't fight what you can't see. And until you bring those stories into the light, they keep running the show. That's why this process isn't about forcing the outcome. It's about clearing the path inside you so that the outcome can actually arrive. It's about asking the hard questions. What do I really believe will happen if I get what I want? What am I afraid will change? And when you start answering those questions honestly, you'll be amazed at what comes up. It's not about blame. It's not about shame. It's about curiosity, about finally giving yourself permission to tell the truth, even if that truth feels uncomfortable. And in that space of honesty, that's where real power lives. That's where transformation begins. Because once you see it, you can choose differently. You can let go of the old story. You can stop carrying beliefs that were never really yours. And in that release, you make room for the new to enter. You make space for possibility. Let's talk about the first step of this journey. A lot of people jump into manifestation with big hopes, but nobody tells them what's really underneath. The truth is, you can't build something lasting if the foundation is cracked. And most of us have been standing on shaky ground for years, carrying beliefs we didn't even choose. Maybe you were told you had to earn love by being perfect. Maybe you learned that money only comes with struggle. Those stories got planted early, and they've been running the show ever since. I remember growing up hearing my dad say, "Nothing good comes easy." And for the longest time, I carried that like it was gospel. Every time something felt joyful or effortless, I'd second guess it. I'd wait for the other shoe to drop. It wasn't until I started unpacking that belief that I realized how many opportunities I pushed away just because they felt too good to be true. And I've seen the same thing happen with friends, clients, even strangers online. We internalize these stories so deep. We don't even notice them anymore. They just feel like facts. That's why the first step is awareness. You can't shift what you don't see. So I tell people, grab a notebook, sit down somewhere quiet, and start listing every belief you've inherited about money, love, success, failure. Don't overthink it. Don't judge it. Just write. Maybe you realize you believe rich people are greedy, or that love never lasts, or that happiness is selfish. Whatever comes up, let it pour out, because the moment you write it down, you've already started creating space between you and the belief. And here's the thing, that list might surprise you. You might look at it and think, wow, no wonder I've been stuck. But that's not a bad thing. That's clarity. That's the starting point. You can't paint over cracks and expect the wall to hold. You've got to get under the surface. You've got to see what you're working with. And and once you see it, you get to decide what stays and what goes. One woman I worked with told me she never realized how deeply she believed she had to be the caretaker in every relationship. She thought if she stopped taking care of everyone else, they'd leave. So guess what happened? Every relationship felt draining. She was exhausted, resentful, and alone. But when she finally faced that belief, something shifted. She started setting boundaries. She started letting people show up for her. And for the first time, she felt what it was like to be supported. That's the power of this first step. It's not glamorous. It won't look impressive on Instagram. But it's the beginning of real freedom. When you're willing to face the stories running your life, you're already rewriting them. You're already creating space for something better. And that's what this journey is about, not pretending you don't have cracks, but being brave enough to fix them so you can build something that lasts. Let's talk about those hidden beliefs nobody warns you about. You know, the ones that sit quietly in the background while you're trying so hard to manifest the life you want. Maybe you're saying all the right things. You're doing the vision boards. You're setting intentions. But something keeps blocking it. You want to be wealthy, but deep down, you carry this old belief that wealthy people are selfish or greedy. Every time you try to call in more money, that belief whispers, you don't want to be like them. And you wonder why it's not showing up. Or maybe it shows up in love. You want a deep, committed relationship. But inside, you hold on to this idea that you're not really worthy of being chosen. Maybe it comes from childhood, maybe from past heartbreaks. But every time someone gets close, you pull away or sabotage it without even realizing why. That's the thing about these limiting beliefs. They're sneaky. They don't announce themselves. They operate in the shadows, creating patterns, blocking opportunities, keeping you stuck in loops that feel frustratingly familiar. I remember hearing about someone who spent her whole life being the one everyone depended on. She was the fixer, the helper, the strong one. And while she dreamed of being supported, of having someone take care of her for once, deep inside she believed that if she stopped carrying everything, everything would fall apart. So when money opportunities came, she turned them down. When love tried to show up, she kept it at arm's length, not because she didn't want them, but because she didn't believe she could hold them without sacrificing herself. That's what we're talking about here. Limiting beliefs aren't loud. They don't scream no from the rooftops. They whisper just enough doubt to make you hesitate. They plant just enough fear to keep you small. And unless you stop and question them, they'll keep running the show behind the scenes. This work makes you pause and ask, where did I learn this? Who told me this was true? Is this belief really mine? Or did I inherit it from family, culture, religion, and more importantly, do I want to keep it? Because here's the truth. You can't manifest something you don't believe you're allowed to have. You can't call in what your inner world keeps rejecting. Until you bring those hidden beliefs into the light, they'll keep holding the steering wheel. And this isn't about blame. It's not about shaming yourself for having these beliefs. It's about recognizing they're there so you can finally choose something different. I've seen people break lifelong patterns just by naming the belief out loud. There's something powerful about saying, I used to believe that love had to be earned. Or, I used to believe that money would make me a bad person. Saying it, writing it, acknowledging it, it creates space. And in that space, you get to choose again. You get to rewrite the story. You get to decide what belief actually serves you. That's what inner work looks like. It's not glamorous. It's not instant, but it's life-changing. And once you start that process, you begin to see how much of your life was shaped by beliefs you didn't even choose. You see how you've been living out someone else's narrative. And with that awareness comes freedom. You stop playing small. You stop apologizing. You stop sabotaging the very things you prayed for. Can I ask you something? What belief would you be willing to let go of today? Because now you're aligning from the inside out. So if you've ever wondered why it feels so hard to receive, why you keep pushing away the very things you say you want, maybe it's time to ask, what do I really believe about this? And more importantly, am I ready to believe something new? That's where the real manifest journey begins. Not with a vision board, not with a ritual, but with a decision to face the root, to pull it up, to plant something better. Let's talk about what it really looks like when you start doing the inner work. I'm not talking about lighting a candle, playing relaxing music, or setting up a perfect journaling space. I'm talking about the moments that feel raw, unpolished, and sometimes downright messy. That's the heart of what this journey really is, peeling back layers you didn't even know were covering up your truth. The first step is awareness. You have to sit down and get brutally honest with yourself. Write down every belief you've been carrying about love, money, success, or even just your worthiness. Don't filter it. Don't try to sound enlightened. Just let it all out. Maybe you've been telling yourself, I have to work twice as hard to get half as much, or love always leaves, or money isn't for people like me. Whatever comes up, put it on paper, because once it's written, you can no longer pretend it's not there. Then comes the second step, rewriting. You take those old beliefs and one by one, you challenge them. You write a new narrative. For every money is hard to make, you choose money flows to me with ease. For every I'm not worthy of love, you choose I am deserving of real love. It won't feel natural at first. Your mind might push back. But with every new phrase, you're planting a seed for something different. And then comes the part most people skip, embodying it. This is where mirror work shows up. You stand in front of a mirror, you look yourself in the eye, and you say those new beliefs out loud. And let me tell you, sometimes that's the hardest part. I've heard stories of people breaking down in tears the first time they tried this, unable to even speak the words. But they kept showing up, day after day. And slowly, the words started to stick. The shame started to loosen. The belief started to shift. Inner work isn't glamorous. Nobody claps for you while you're sitting alone, staring down your fears. But every time you write, every time you speak, every time you choose a new thought, you're building a new foundation. You're rewiring pathways in your brain. You're telling yourself it's safe to believe something better. And that's real progress. I remember one woman who shared that for months she avoided the mirror part. She thought writing was enough. But when she finally stood in front of her reflection and spoke those words, it felt like meeting herself for the first time. She said, I realized I've been waiting for someone else to tell me these things, but maybe I was supposed to tell them to myself. And that moment, that was the breakthrough. So if you're thinking this process sounds simple, you're right, it is simple. But it's not easy. And that's exactly why it works. Because every small step, every uncomfortable truth faced, every new belief spoken, that's how you stop living someone else's story. That's how you begin to write your own. Let's take a step deeper and really talk about what happens once you've started peeling those layers back. Because let me be honest with you, it's not some overnight, flashy moment where you suddenly feel healed and whole. Nah, it's quieter than that. It's subtle. And sometimes, it feels like nothing's happening at all, but something is shifting under the surface. You might notice it when you respond differently to the same old triggers, like maybe that coworker's rude comment doesn't hit the same way anymore, or you set a boundary without feeling guilty for the first time. Those are the wins that nobody claps for, but they're proof you're changing. I remember a story from a friend who went through this exact process. She told me she used to think healing meant she'd never feel sad or anxious again. But the truth, Healing meant she could feel those emotions without drowning in them. One day, she caught herself crying, and instead of shaming herself for being too emotional, she whispered, "It's okay." And in that small moment, she realized she wasn't fighting herself anymore. That's healing. Another shift happens in how you see the people around you. Maybe you used to carry resentment or bitterness, waiting for apologies that never came. But as you heal, you stop needing those apologies to be okay. You release people not because what they did was right, but because you're tired of holding the weight. It doesn't mean you forget. It means you choose peace over proving a point. And that's powerful. You might also notice that your desires change. What used to excite you might not anymore. That high-paying job you once chased, maybe now you're craving freedom or creativity instead. And that can feel scary. But it's actually a sign you're coming home to yourself. You're listening to a deeper voice inside, one that was drowned out by expectations for so long. Here's the thing though, this stage of healing can feel lonely, because not everyone will understand. Some people might say you've changed. Some might drift away because your growth challenges their comfort zones. And that's hard, but it's also necessary. Every time you shed an old layer, you make room for people and opportunities that match the new you. That's alignment. And I want you to know, if you're in this stage right now, you're not crazy for feeling a mix of peace and grief. You're not weak for missing what you had to let go of. That's part of the process. It's bittersweet, but every tear, every goodbye, every uncomfortable step forward, it's building something beautiful. You're rebuilding yourself, stronger, softer, wiser. Pause for a second. What story have you been carrying that no longer serves you? Wait before you scroll away. I need you to really hear this next part. So if today feels heavy, take a breath. Celebrate the quiet wins. Trust the shifts you can't see yet. And remember, healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about coming back to who you were before the world told you who to be. Let's talk about what happens when you finally let go of those old stories. You know the ones I'm talking about, the beliefs that have been riding on your back for years, weighing you down like invisible baggage. Maybe it's the story that you're never enough, or the one that says love has to be earned, or success only comes if you sacrifice everything else. Whatever it is, carrying it for so long starts to feel normal, but the moment you decide to put it down, that's when something powerful happens. I remember a friend of mine sharing how she'd always believed she wasn't smart enough to start her own business. For years, she stayed in safe jobs, watching others take risks. But deep down, she knew she had ideas, visions, dreams that wouldn't leave her alone. One day, she finally sat with that belief. She wrote it out, stared at it on paper, and asked herself, who told me this? Where did it even come from? And the answer shocked her. It wasn't even her own voice, it was a teacher's comment from decades ago. Just one sentence she'd carried like truth. When she saw that, something cracked open. She realized she didn't have to keep honoring that old sentence. She didn't have to keep proving it right. And from that moment, she started taking small steps. A class here, a client there. Within a year, she'd launched her own business. Not because the belief magically disappeared, but because she stopped giving it the power to steer her choices. That's what I want you to understand. Letting go doesn't mean you never hear the old voice again. It doesn't mean fear never knocks on your door. It means you stop inviting it in to sit at your table. You acknowledge it, but you don't hand it the keys. And with every choice you make from a new place, from truth instead of fear, you're building a different kind of life. Sometimes people think letting go is a big, dramatic moment. But honestly, it's usually a series of quiet decisions. 1,000 little shifts. Choosing not to respond the way you always did. Choosing to pause before falling back into an old pattern. Choosing to believe, just for today, that something different is possible. And over time, those small choices add up. They become your new normal. And here's the beautiful thing: as you release those old stories, you create space. Space for better beliefs, space for healthier relationships, space for joy, peace, freedom. It's like clearing out a cluttered closet. You finally make room for what fits the person you're becoming. So, if you're listening to this and thinking, I don't even know where to start, that's okay. Start with one belief. Write it down. Look at it. Question it. Ask, is this even true? And then choose, intentionally, what you want to believe instead. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be yours. Every step counts. Every small release matters. And the more you practice, the more natural it feels. Until one day, you look back and realize you've been living from a different place for a while now. You've been lighter, braver, freer. And that's what this journey is really about. Let's take a moment to talk about what happens after the work. You know, after the messy middle, after the breakthroughs, after the tears. A lot of people expect some kind of big celebration moment, like they'll wake up and everything's magically fixed. But the truth is, transformation sneaks up on you quietly. One day you realize you're not reacting the same way. You're not triggered by the same things. You're not shrinking yourself to fit places you've outgrown. It's subtle, but it's powerful, and that's how you know the work stuck. I once heard someone say, healing doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like relief, like breathing a little easier, like laughing more freely. And that's exactly it. You don't even notice the shift until you're in a situation that used to undo you. And suddenly, you're standing steady. That's the victory. It's not flashy. It's foundational. And in that steadiness, something beautiful happens. You start to trust yourself again. You start to trust life again. You start making choices from peace instead of fear. And that creates a ripple. People around you feel it. Your relationships shift. Your boundaries strengthen. Opportunities open that you never saw before because now you're aligned to receive them. That's what this work leads to, not perfection, but presence. Not a life without challenges, but a life where challenges don't crush you anymore. I remember a friend who went through this journey telling me, I thought healing would make me soft, but it actually made me stronger in the best way. And that's true. It makes you strong in a way that's flexible, not brittle. Strong in a way that bends but doesn't break. Strong in a way that lets love in without losing yourself. So, as we close this chapter, I want you to really sit with this. What's one small sign that you've grown? What's one moment you handled differently that your old self couldn't name it? Celebrate it. Because those moments matter. They're proof. They're milestones. And if nobody's told you yet, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of every step you've taken, every truth you've faced, every boundary you've set. This is what becoming looks like. Quiet, steady, unstoppable.